This week, more than 100 people turned out for an event at the Crystal VFW, recognizing the fact that more than 50 years have passed since the first U.S. troops arrived in Vietnam.
The Vietnam War lasted 20 years, and for many vets, coming back to the States was a rude awakening. We get more from Eric Nelson.
For some Vietnam vets, talking about the war opens up old wounds.
It was a terrible experience, a terrible war. It was a dirty war.
Vietnam was a polarizing conflict. These vets were caught in the middle of a battle that fostered anger and emotion.
Our generation did nothing more different than the World War II generation, the Korea generation. The only thing is ours was an unpopular war.
At the Crystal VFW, the vets reflected on the shabby treatment they received when they returned to the U.S.
Nobody in uniform was welcome anywhere.
They were hardly conquering heroes.
I know we shouldn't hold a grudge, but we do. We spent 50 years of not being welcomed by our government, not being welcomed by the general public.
I came back to North Dakota, and North Dakota wasn't as bad as when I moved to Minnesota. It was still terrible when I moved here. And I moved here in 1970, and they still had riots going on.
It's still a sore point with Vietnam veterans, the way they were treated when they got home initially.
From coast to coast, many vets returned to a cauldron of opposition in the 1960s and 70s.
They blame the warrior for everything that happened, and it's not true. When you send a warrior to war, you're supposed to support them when they come back home.
Vietnam was also the first televised war, which fueled the hostility.
It's the first time the American public got to sit on their couch in their living room, and the 6 o'clock news would come on with Walter Cronkite, and all you see is Vietnam. The body counts.
Despite all of this, Vietnam vets are proud that they have changed the perception of troops who return to U.S. soil.
Vietnam veterans were instrumental in a lot of the changes that were made to make veterans feel welcome and not blaming the warrior for the war.
Now, according to Don FERNSTROM, who organized the VFW event in Crystal and was in the war, 91% of Vietnam veterans say they are glad they fought for their country and are proud of their service. 74% said they would go back if they had to, even knowing what they know now. The U.S. lost more than 58,000 troops in Vietnam. Alex and Mike.